Well, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us. In my experience on both YouTube and Pinterest, it seems as though women just don't care that much about the subject of investing. I would think that any YouTuber whose content mainly focuses on investing can verify that women make up only a very small segment of their audience. It's usually going to be young men who are making up the demographic of interested investors. That's kind of the audience you'd expect if you were going to war or something. Like, that's lunacy. We're not going to war, man. We're not going to war. It's the same thing with Pinterest. If you have a Pinterest account dedicated to something like farmhouses, you can expect to have followers in the millions. If your Pinterest account is dedicated to budgeting or being frugal, you can expect to have about 100,000 followers. And with investing, you're lucky to have a couple thousand followers. So why is that? Well, Pinterest is mostly women, and women are not interested or motivated to invest. And it doesn't seem reasonable, especially when you consider that women will probably end up making less money than men, and that women will probably take time off to stay home with the children at some point. Women should outnumber men when it comes to investing. So if you're interested in women and investing, you're going to notice that mutual funds are the main group that are doing all these studies and coming up with all the conclusions. So one of the conclusions will always be that women tend to put money into mutual funds, whereas men tend to gamble on high-risk individual stocks. And there's a small amount of truth to that. Men seem to be prone to gambling and taking risks. But that doesn't mean women should be putting their money into mutual funds. That's just locking in a lower rate of return. Mutual funds are not necessarily the answer. Of course, putting money in a mutual fund is better than just saving. And unfortunately, women tend towards just saving rather than investing. But I personally think you're better off investing in individual companies rather than into mutual funds. So before we go any further, I want to just do a little disclaimer. Although there's going to be some facts thrown in, a lot of what I'm saying is going to be based on my own personal experience with the opposite sex. And a lot of what I'm saying is still applicable to guys, so don't feel like if you're a guy you can't watch this. And if something I'm saying is making you feel triggered, let me know about it in the comment section. Feel free to disagree. But none of what I'm saying is meant to put down any one or any particular group. It's just meant to draw attention to the fact that women tend to be less interested in investing, and especially active investing, even though they have some very clear advantages. And of course, with everything I'm saying, I'm generalizing a lot. So why should women invest? Why not just put all your money into a savings account? Well, savings accounts generally don't have that great of a rate of return. Believe me when I tell you they're pretty much garbage. They're garbage. And women always want to buy stuff. You know, a new stove, a duvet, an armoire, pictures on the wall, it never ends. But seriously, women think a lot more about the future and planning events and occasions. They're more interested in sending kids to college or going somewhere special for holidays, or just going anywhere. You're not romantic, you don't take me nowhere. Guys, on the other hand, are more like truck, beer, happy. And please don't mix the two. Now, I'm not saying all men are like that, I'm not like that. I don't drink and I don't own a truck. But a lot of the guys I know are like that. They put a lot of energy into work, and that's about it. So, as a woman, unless you want to depend on truck and beer guy, you gotta come up with the money to do that stuff yourself. And unless you're spending that money right away, you should have it invested while you wait. And it needs to be invested, because if your money isn't doing the work, then you may as well be spending it. It's going to be worth more today than it will be worth in 5 years. The world's changed a lot in the last century for women. As a woman, you're stuck somewhere between the traditional role of being a wife and a mother and being just another Joe in the workforce. Trying to juggle those two areas is not always straightforward. Sometimes they're even at odds with each other. And because everything's changed, everyone's living their lives a little differently. Some women are single and they're fine with that. They have a job and they don't plan on getting married, but they still need to invest. No one cares if you retire or not, it's all on you. If you want to continue that lifestyle, you need to make investing a priority. Other women are going to college or university and they might get married, they might not, they don't know yet. It's probably best for them to figure out what they do want in life before they take out a student loan and start taking some courses. Going to school is an invitation to get into debt with the hopes of getting a job, whereas investing is an invitation to have money, make more money. And potentially some women who ended up having kids would have been in a better position if they'd invested their education money. And a lot of guys too. But that's not a popular opinion, so I'll just leave it there. And then there are the women who did all that and now they have 2 kids and they realize that it's just cheaper to keep your kids at home rather than send them to daycare and work. Because the amount they end up making isn't much more than the daycare cost. So it's just not worth it. And maybe on top of that, they prefer just being with their kids. But they still have some student loans that they need to pay off and they're limited to one income. So as a quick aside, I just want to bring up that it's probably better to focus on paying off your debts than to start investing, with the exceptions of maybe a mortgage or student loan. It's going to depend on the amount of interest you pay on a loan in particular, but low interest loans like a mortgage shouldn't prevent you from getting started with investing. Things like credit card debt should be paid off first almost always because they're going to have such an absurd amount of interest. So luckily, the world's changed in a lot of other ways as well. You might think of investing as a bunch of sweaty men yelling at each other on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, which I think still goes on, but it totally plays into the idea that this is all male-dominated and chaotic. But it's a far more peaceful experience with apps like Robinhood, M1 Finance, Questrade. Investing couldn't possibly be any easier. A few clicks on the screen and it's all done. It's a lot like making a purchase on Amazon. But instead of losing value from the moment you purchase an item, it's very likely that it will appreciate in value. So how could women be better investors than men? Or what traits do women possess that might make them better investors? Well, for lack of a better term, women are smarter. And it's not that men are stupid, but they're some kind of weird herd animal. Something about our hormones or natural inclinations just make us do stupid things. Maybe it's because we're trying to compete with other guys or trying to impress women, but it gets us in trouble, and it's painful to watch. When it comes to stocks, men tend to invest in high-risk stocks that they know very little about. Now, I'm not saying all men are like that. I personally try not to do that kind of thing, but men are far more likely to tend towards that kind of behavior than women are. And maybe it has to do with them being historically hunter-gatherers, which is a far more risky undertaking. Women, by contrast, are far more risk-averse. They're more likely to do the research, and they're more likely to stay within their circle of competence. And that's a benefit because gambling and speculating are not activities that smart investors pursue. Women, as the caretakers of children, just aren't going to be comfortable with high-risk scenarios. They'll naturally gravitate towards safer investments and will do well because of it. Women are better at saving money. Investing takes money, there's no way around that, and women are just better at saving. That's why budgeting and frugality are such popular areas on Pinterest. Women love that stuff. Couponing and sites like Groupon are way more popular among the female demographic. Women are good at squirreling away money. If a guy has $100, that's beer for the weekend or a car part. If a woman has $10, that's 3 items at the dollar store. Like, we just think about things differently. There's a little change in that area with the FIRE movement, but I would say that in general, men are not that good as savers and they're not big on budgeting. So then there's the budgeting versus the go big or go home issue. For a man to start investing, he's got to inherit a bunch of money, win the lottery, or sell his home. They have to go big or go home. If they can't do it in a big way, they're probably not going to do it. Men aren't going to save $10 a week and invest it over a period of several years. Women, on the other hand, will do exactly that. They seem to know the value of saving a dollar. Maybe it has to do with women making less money than men, or learning how to stretch one paycheck, or making sure all the mouths get fed. Women are either geared that way naturally, or they very quickly learn that trait. I'm not saying women always spend their money on really important things, but they definitely seem to have a real value for money that men don't seem to possess. I also think women would trade less when they invest. Men will sit there all day and look at stocks like 3 or 4 times a day. But I think women would invest one time and not look at it again until it's time to take the money out as a way to save themselves undue stress. At least that's the impression I get from the women I know. And I suspect in most cases that'll be a big advantage. Constantly looking at your portfolio, especially when things aren't going well, can lead you to buying high and selling low, and that's never recommended. Buying and holding is a great strategy. If you're not comfortable with timing the markets and you don't like the idea of paying a lot of fees, it can be a great way to do it. I think that method would suit the vast majority of women and that they would see great results because of it. That's how the great investors like Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger do it. Buy and hold. Almost paradoxically, I think women are good at settling. Thousands of years of choosing men who just barely meet the minimum requirements for cleanliness and agreeableness has made women great settlers. I'm only half joking, and in the stock market that can be a great advantage. Taking a gain is the only alternative to taking a loss, and no matter how much energy and work you put in, it really only comes down to those 2 options. So often, men will see a gain and it's almost like it isn't real money. You see a 5% gain and you think, it's nothing. But that might be like $1,000, like that's a week's pay or a mortgage payment or something. It's hard for a guy to see that as real money. Their gambling and go big or go home tendencies start to kick in. I think in general, women are more likely to look at it and see it for what it is, real money. Women are most likely going to be the main shoppers in their household, and therefore will have a greater understanding of companies and merchandise. Women generally tend to go shopping more than men, and if there are children, it will often end up being the woman who ends up buying the kids clothing, school supplies, and groceries. To further prove my point, it may shock you, but I know almost nothing about hair care products, whereas your shower is probably lined with various hair care products and soaps. Besides your sink, there's probably various tools that only women know how to operate. And your bedroom probably has a vanity filled with concealer, foundation, makeup, eyeliner, eyeshadow, lotions, nail polish, and items of that ilk. So if you're a burgeoning female investor, I just want to point you to a few companies that you may have a large advantage with when it comes to investing because of your circle of competence. And the circle of competence is just a phrase that describes your area of knowledge. So for instance, if you're a doctor or a nurse, you might know what kind of equipment is good or what companies in that area are doing well, so you'd want to stick to that. So as women, there are areas you probably know more about than men, so let's look at some possibilities. So first up is Lululemon, ticker symbol LULU. Now here's a store I'd never been in. The only thing I really knew about them was that they sold yoga pants for women. Apparently, they sell clothes for men as well. You know, that's something I didn't know. So they sell yoga gear, and they're obviously benefiting from yoga's increased popularity throughout the world, but they also just sell general athletic gear as well. From a brief look at their stores throughout the world, looks like there's a lot of room to grow. I think UK only had 14 stores, France had 3 stores, and for comparison, France has about double the population of Canada, and yet Canada had 63 stores. So there's probably a lot of room to grow. On top of that, nearly 30% of their business is done through the online store. That's a number that's likely to grow due to the current worldwide situation. As a woman, you'll probably know way before I do if they start using poor quality materials, or if their company just falls out of favor, or if yoga is just not the bee's knees anymore. You'd also be more likely to notice if their business is doing better than normal or if they introduce some great new product. I'm at a disadvantage because it's predominantly a female-oriented consumer base. So the next company is Estee Lauder, ticker symbol EL. They own brands like Clinique, MAC, Bumble and Bumble, Tom Ford Beauty, and Aveda. And the only two I had heard of are MAC, makeup of course, and Tom Ford. So with a company like Estee Lauder, their safety is in their diversity of brands. It's unlikely that all 25 brands will fall out of favor with women all across the world at the same time. But as a man, this will forever be outside my circle of competence, whereas most women will already likely know the products. And Estee Lauder is a great company that's seen both the revenue and net income steadily rise over the course of years. Now the third company was going to be Wayfair, ticker symbol W, because it's a more diverse company and it's not just another beauty products company. They sell furniture and home accessories, but as I was looking at their company, I noticed something I didn't like. They're not a profitable company, and I can't recommend a company that's not making money. And on top of that, there's a good chance that Amazon will eventually become a competitor, and that's not the kind of competitor you want. So how can you find your own stocks? Whatever your sex or your area of interest, you should be looking around at the different companies and products that you use and see if they are publicly traded companies. And then begin to research the companies to see if they're worth investing in. Now there's certainly a lot to that, and it could probably warrant its own video. But as a starting point, just be more aware of the companies and products that you're using and who's benefiting from you purchasing their products. So in summary, in my opinion, women seem more smart and risk-averse. They are better savers, and they choose budgeting over the go big or go home method of amassing wealth, all of which are dominant traits. Women are also more likely to trade less when investing and would probably favor the more advantageous buy and hold approach to portfolio management. And finally, women are accustomed to settling and are also the more predominant shoppers. So they hold a wider and better understanding of various products, which is a huge benefit. Anywho, if you're a man or a woman or something else, I hope you enjoyed the video and I hope you start investing. If you like what you saw, give me the thumbs up and subscribe. And don't forget what I told you.